Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everyone, to the Fantasy Live Show. We are so excited to have you back here with us yet again. And you already know this by now. Kendall, Valenzuela, joined by the one and only Thor, Nystrom. Thor, this is an extra special episode, and I'm really excited to get into it because we are talking about the Thor 500, something you've put your blood, sweat, and tears into for the last few months. I mean, I'm so excited that people get to read it now and check it out. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, when I was a kid, for spring break, we'd always go to the airport and I would always get like the NFL draft magazine. And I was always looking for the one that had the biggest big board at the end of it. Because when I was a kid watching the draft on TV, one of the big old boxy ones, you'd be crossing names out as you went.
Yeah.
I'd only get 50-player big boards. Maybe if I was lucky a year, 100-player big board, I'd run out of that, right? Like in the fourth round. So when I started doing this for work, I wanted to have a 500-player big board, and I love player comparison. So we have 500 player comparisons on there, one for every guy on the board.
Amazing. I'm so excited. And again, everyone can find the Thor 500. And yeah, it's just as cool as it sounds at fantasylife.com, out live today. All right, Thor, well, let's get into it. It's a Thor Thursday. We're going to get into that Thor 500 right now. Before we get into some of the players, Thor, because right now today, this episode, we're going to break down your players that you're higher than consensus on. So we're going to go through quarterbacks, receivers, linemen, you name it. We're going to go through all of them. I kind of want to know, though, the ends of this process for you with the Thor 500 and how, not only how long did this take you, because I know you're a sick man when it comes to these to these college kids, but just, what the process was and what really stood out to you this year in making this.
Yeah, I mean, you come into the process. My context is covering these guys in the fall of college football going back years and years. So I have a baseline with it. We work on our database during the fall, start that up in the summer. I get information from the NFL scouting services. That's how we build a baseline with that. But after the national title game, then you're burrowing in deep, right, on the individual guys and getting into the micro, as far as their evaluations, their backstories, their analytics, their measurables, that we get during the pre-draft process with the athletic tests and all that different stuff. And then it's the fun stuff, right? It's where this thing is not a science. If it ever became a science, my job will go away, but it never will. This will always be an art, right? Comparing one prospect to another one qualitatively, where would you put them? And then, ranking out positions, and then you rank out your big board. So it's a process I really enjoy.
I love it. Again, the Thor 500 live now at fantasylife.com. We're going to go through players that Thor Nystrom is higher on than consensus. So let's dive into it, Thor. Let's start with the quarterbacks here in Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. I remember I was going back through my notes. You said this months ago, Thor. I mean, you were on top of this. You said, I believe people are sleeping on Kyle McCord. And when you look at it, finished third in the nation in wins above replacement. You have him right now, QB5. Consensus is QB7. What do you like about him?
Yeah, Tyler Shuck is like the flavor of the day for this process with the quarterbacks that are outside the top four, a guy that didn't break out until his seventh season and is at an elevated age. I think Kyle McCord should be that guy, a guy who has, I mean, the thing that Tyler Shuck is forwarded as, it's like, oh, this is a guy that you get a little bit after those guys who has the ability to start multiple years in the NFL. Again, I think that is more descriptive of Kyle McCord. What I see with Kyle McCord, it evokes a couple quarterbacks actually that played around in the state of Michigan in college, Chad Henne and Kirk Cousins. You have some of the starter kit of those kind of guys. Kyle McCord's not a great athlete, and he doesn't have a howitzer, but he knows what he's doing in the pocket, and he will attack coverage looks. He sees it right away, and that's where he'll get aggressive. And we've seen him pushing the ball down the field. Again, it's not a howitzer, but denoting that coverage look early and then attacking windows, be it in the zone, some of the hole shots, be it down the sideline or the seam shots that he does. You saw this year his game elevate. It was sort of ironically leaving Ohio State, where the system that he was playing in before was with better players, much better players, of course, but there was system rigidity with that. And we got to see this past season when Kyle McCord, you sort of took the shackles off him, and now it's Kyle, you're our best player, and we need you to go out and win. You saw him emboldened to start taking more chances, and we saw more stuff with him as a pocket passer, the instincts that he has with that. I think this guy has the potential. If you look at guys outside the top 4 quarterbacks in this class, I think this is the dude that I would plant my flag on of. I think he has the best shot to start multiple years in the NFL down the line.
Because Kyle McCord, when I looked at him, Thor, and you say, okay, so he lacks elite athleticism and arm strength. You've said that before. And then also, the mental aspects of his game is probably something that he can get better at in the NFL level. Are those things, though, that you can overcome in the NFL when you're looking at a guy and saying, all right, well, he's not in this elite tier. Can they reach those heights, though, coming in if he's, QB5 off the board on draft night?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a middle round pick, very much like Kirk Cousins, right? Like, and of course, he's not going to be at the top of an organization's hierarchy as far as quarterback of the present or potentially even future. So but you're going to get in the building, you're going to get an opportunity to open eyes. And if he goes along the same progression as a couple of those names I just tossed out of Kirk Cousins, where initially, you go in there, you're just sort of the developmental guy, afterthought in that case. Obviously, he was the second guy they drafted after RG3 that year. But you go in there and you work and you keep working on that skill set. Again, Kyle McCord's game jumped up this past season. You mentioned it, the PFF metric, wins above replacement, number 3 overall in the nation. Right, that was a guy who got kicked out of Columbus, Ohio the year before, or the offseason in advance of that, because Ryan Day and Chip Kelly wanted to go out and get Will Howard. I think Howard's a better quarterback than Will Howard. I think he's a better prospect for the NFL than that. There are tools here to work with. Again, it's not, you look at the measurables, they're not elite, and that's why I think he gets overlooked. And I also think the improvement that you saw with Kyle McCord last fall at Syracuse, I think that gets overlooked too. Right. Like, people think more of the year before and they think of the thing of, oh, he got kicked out for Will Howard. And it's hard to argue with Ohio State's end of that because, of course, Ohio State went on to win the national title. But again, Kyle McCord's game jumped up big time this past year. And I do think that you have a skill set there that is worthy of working on, developing at the NFL level and potentially you get a starter out of it down the line.
Kyle McCord and Kirk Cousins, it's the Spider-Man gif, like you said, the pointing meme where it's just like, you're the same person. I'm him, you're me. That's what you think.
Lot of similarities there. A lot of similarities.
I don't hate it.
I mean, the physical package, very similar, in the pocket as well. Again, they're not going to be running around, right? They want to attack you in the air. But Kirk Cousins is another guy thing that coaches always appreciated about Kirk Cousins. You see it right away. Right? Like you see the coverage look right away and he knows with the concept, first read, second read, third read, throw the ball away or whatever it is. Right. So like you would see Cousins bang, bang, bang. And it's become that way with Kyle McCord again, emboldened, leaving the Ohio State system. It's something where you wouldn't think of it that way, but leaving the talent, leaving sort of the cocoon that he was in Ohio State, allowed Kyle McCord to become his own man, and his game flowered out this past year because of that. And I think he's a really interesting thought experiment for the NFL.
Definitely. Again, your rank in the Thor 500 QB5 consensus ranking QB7 for Kyle McCord. So remember his name, maybe a little bit better than Tyler Shuck, who, like you said, is the whatever it is, draft darling right now, if you want to say that, Thor. Let's continue on here talking about another quarterback that I know you've been high on since, I don't know, last year, maybe even 2 years ago. Who knows? We're going to do a Dynasty Deep Dive presented by DraftKings on Shedeur Sanders. All right, Thor, time for that Dynasty Deep Dive presented by DraftKings. And again, we're going through the Thor 500 live now at fantasylife.com. So you want to go and check that out. But listen, we did a mock draft just a couple of days ago, and it was one of these things where, in that draft, Shedeur Sanders, number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans. And it would shock a lot of people. But when I asked you, Thor, you're like, no, this doesn't shock me. This would make sense because you think Shedeur Sanders is better than Cam Ward coming into the draft.
So when Emory did that, I mean, Emory and I are on the same page with Shedeur Sanders. And, people, you just pay attention to the media as a whole. And I think you get a lot of bad storylines about Shedeur Sanders. So the public at large, I think they've been let off the beaten trail a little bit by some of the media brethren here, some of these different storylines and whatnot. But if you can unspool that from your head and just watch him on the field, watch his tape, I think you see the best quarterback in this class. Certainly has the best accuracy, certainly has the best placement, certainly takes care of the ball over volume, the best in this class as well. much better athlete than he is given credit for. He ran a 4.65 coming out of high school. He is the son of one of the great athletes in the history of the sport. And we've seen him on the GPS when he does get into the open field, 19 miles an hour, that's moving for a quarterback. It's not someone, though, that wants to run. When he's in the pocket, he is using his athleticism to evade and to buy extra opportunities for his wide receivers. You will see Shedeur Sanders, when he's scrambling towards the line of scrimmage, slam on the brakes before he gets there. Mm-hmm. A defender is inevitably, by instinct, going to get sucked down. You start seeing the quarterback scrambling towards the line of scrimmage, and then he can take advantage of that and hit the open receivers down the field. He played behind Civ offensive lines, especially the last 2 years at Colorado, without the aid of a running game, and he still managed to keep his head about him. The modulations he made for his game behind that Swiss cheese offensive line, I thought were really cool. I think another unfair nitpick on him is the lack of pocket presence. I don't see that at all. I see a tough kid that will step into down the gun barrel when someone right in his face. He will step into it full extension on the mechanics, and he'll take it on the chin. So I think it's a kid that's really misunderstood. He's quarterback too in the consensus rankings. Obviously, my quarterback won, but I got to bang the table for Shedeur Sanders one more time.
I like it. And we've been with each other lockstep every step of the way, because I said to myself, okay, look, Thor likes some QB1, and you do look, and you almost have to take out everything, all the outside noise, Thor. I feel like that's, like you said, what's gotten into the Shedeur Sanders talk, is you don't look at, his athleticism and how good he can be in the NFL. And so I like this stat that you pulled up, though. Last season ranked number 3 in turnover-worthy play rate. Ward's turnover-worthy play rate, 3.1, 3 times higher than Sanders, 97th percentile in avoiding negative throws / dropbacks per PFF. So, it's all there, Thor. And I think the bigger question that I want to ask you now at this point, because we've talked about Sanders a lot, especially elite at avoiding those negative plays that we just talked about. When you look at landing spots between, let's say, the top teams right now, the Tennessee Titans, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Saints are also looking for quarterbacks, where would you send Sanders to get the best version of him in 2025?
Maybe in 2025, maybe Cleveland or the Steelers, of course. Like if he were to get that, as far as this situation right away, Cleveland probably following that. Long term, ironically, the Saints could be interesting because of the play caller there and because of his fit there. We obviously best quarterback in Saints history was another small pocket passer with tremendous accuracy and placement in Drew Brees, and you get inside the dome there. Cleveland going to be opening the dome here in a bit, but outdoor for a couple more years. But with the Saints, you'd be with the offensive coach. They still have skill talent there, of course. And you'd be in a decent system. I'll be curious to see, do the Saints, are they going to invest a lot of draft equity in the quarterback position here in lieu of that Derek Carr news, or are they going for the big tank for and potentially hope that they can convince Arch Manning through back channels or whatever to declare after his third year? Because that's the thing. And Arch Manning, his Peyton and Eli, they stayed 4 years in college, and that was pre-NIL. Mannings don't need money either, but it'll be interesting to see how the Saints, sort of unspool that. But yeah, Shedeur Sanders, I think he's got a couple of different fits that would be pretty good.
Yeah, and what would that be? 2027 then for the Mannings, right? That draft class? They can't wait that long. They need a quarterback.
If Arch stays 4 years, right, which, again, Peyton and Eli did, the NFL, if Arch Manning goes out there and lights it up next year, they will be demanding, jump into the draft. But Peyton Manning, Eli as well, but Peyton Manning, his year, it was – you have to go way back in the time machine with this, but that was a shocker for him to go back to college. And of course it was with Eli as well. They're working under, sort of different decision-making paradigm than a lot of other, prospects or whatever. You're in sort of a different situation there. So that's going to be up to Arch and the family, but it is a subplot to monitor, because this quarterback class, not as good as the last one, and probably not going to be as good as the next one. We don't know who's going to declare yet, but Arch Manning would be considered the crown jewel if he ends up doing so.
2027 for all fans waiting for their quarterback of the future, their franchise quarterback, if you want to wait that long. Thor, since this is a Dynasty Deep Dive, again, presented by DraftKings, I want to know if you're in a Dynasty draft, and let's call it a Superflex Dynasty draft, Shedeur Sanders, where are you taking him in those? Where are you not letting him get away from you? Because a lot of the consensus, like you said, Cam Ward QB1, but where would you be comfortable taking Shedeur with all the receivers, with the deep running back class this year, with the great tight end talents? Where would you take him?
Do you, on the consensus board of the Superflex, do you know where Cam Ward and Shedeur?
Oh, where? Hang on.
Yeah.
Shedeur probably 8 overall.
Okay.
Where?
I would snipe him before that. And Cam Ward, that's, at whatever his price point is going to be significantly above that. I would fade Cam Ward there. Right. Like, and so if you're a team that needs a quarterback, and let's say that you have the higher pick, I would trade out with another quarterback needy team and see if you can thread that needle of, if you project him in your draft, Shedeur going 8 or so, try to get into the 6 or 7 slot while picking up draft equity. Apples to apples, I would rather have Shedeur Sanders, but certainly at that price point, way more. So you also can't reach, right? It's not like in my, dynasty draft in the Superflex that I'm going to be taking Shedeur Sanders number 1 overall. You're at a poker table, right? And you have to read the other people around there as well. And what is the market price of this asset? But you can move back to get them at a more appropriate price as opposed to where everyone else sees them, and then pick up draft equity as well. That's absolutely something I'd be looking to do with Shedeur Sanders. I think he's going to put up stats in the NFL. I think he's going to play early. That game translates. Right? The elite accuracy, elite placement, and then taking care of the ball, that just translates. And I think you're going to see a little bit more. Not that Shedeur is going to become a scrambler at the next level, but I think you're going to see a little bit more running with him. Again, it's a good athlete. And in college, this Shedeur Sanders, for a long time, this kid set out to become a pocket passer. And in college, his 4 years, it was that ethos of staying in the pocket, right? Like we're going to develop as the pocket passer. Don't want anyone to, confuse us with the dual threat, whatever. But now that he's sort of proven that concept and he's going to be a first round pocket passing quarterback, there's nothing left to prove with regards to that. So I think you're going to see a little bit more running from him when the situation opens pragmatically in the NFL. He's never going to run as much as some of the other guys, but you might see more stuff around the goal line. It's a kid with agility and a kid who has acceleration as well. And he's a tough kid. So I think you're going to see just a little bit more with that. But yeah, as a passer, I think he's criminally underrated.
I like it. And QB, he's going off the board right now, like consensus in some of these rankings for Dynasty Superflex rookies going around the 5, 6, 7 mark. So you've got maybe a Tetero McMillan going ahead of him, Henderson, Egbuka, depending on who you draft with, maybe a Travis Hunter, depending on where he lands. So these are all going to change in the next, the draft is in a week, Thor. So these are all going to change, but it is exciting to see where Shedeur Sanders could end up and if he's playing right away or if he's someone that waits just a little bit to see him get his shine. But that was the Dynasty Deep Dive here presented by DraftKings. Basketball fans, we've seen some incredible action on the court as we head toward the NBA playoffs. The games are getting even more intense, and with so many high-stakes matchups ahead, you won't want to miss out. Right now, you can get in on the action with my partners at DraftKings Pick 6, a fresh, exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All new customers who play just $5 will get $50 in Pick 6 credits to keep you in the game. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and sign up with code FANTASYLIFE to claim your offer. This is your shot to level up your NBA experience only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. All right, Thor, continuing on with the Thor 500. Again, that is live at fantasylife.com, and you definitely want to go and check it out. If you want to be ready for draft night, if you want to be like Thor at the airport when he was young, only having 50 spots. No, that's not what's going to happen today, Thor. You got 500, which is again, you're a madman, but we respect it out here. It's amazing.
Yeah. and print that bad boy out every year. I get DMs, I get replies of people being like, I just left the office. I printed the thing off at office, like on the company paper, the company ink. Respect everybody out there. I love it when people print that thing off and then they're watching, crossing off while the draft goes. When I was a kid, I always got frustrated that the best available at the bottom, on the little ticker, didn't go fast enough for me. I wanted it at my fingertips at all times. So it's one tool, a cheap one, to be able to do that, follow along who's still available.
I love it. Again, fantasylife.com for that Thor 500, and it is as cool as it sounds, so make sure you go and check that out. Moving on through, guys, you are higher on than consensus. We're going into the running backs now, and we've got a wide receiver to talk about as well. Let's start with Damien Martinez out of Miami. We've been talking about Damien Martinez for months here, Thor. Your RB7 consensus ranking RB16, so this is a big jump from what we talked about before. Spent 2 seasons with Oregon before transferring to Miami, and that's where you thought he kind of shined there.
Yeah, I don't get why people still why they've been sleeping on Damien Martinez all process. It's a guy that we saw last 3 years over 2 different systems, 2 vastly disparate systems excel, right? Like at Oregon State, it was the downhill, more pro style thing, more condensed. They had more tight ends out there, and that sort of a thing. Downhill, physical type rushing attack. Whereas last year, he goes entirely to the other side of the country right after the Pac-12, the dissolution of that. Yeah. Damien Martinez transfers down to Miami. But Cam Ward, he also went across the country. He was at another dissolved Pac-12 school, but they met up there. And in that system, that was Shannon Dawson's modified air raid system. You'd have 3 receivers out there, you'd 4 wide, including Arroyo a lot of the times with Damien Martinez as the single back there. You had the boxes were thinner, but obviously less blockers as well. So you had more space to work with and stuff like that. And we saw that Damien Martinez's game works really well for that too. Downhill runner, physical, measured in pre-draft process, weighed in at 217, but he plays closer to 225. And he tested 93rd percentile size adjusted RAS athlete. This process, the footwork and the feet are so good on Damien Martinez at that size. I really appreciate that. Also appreciate his ability to slam on the brakes and then re-accelerate. Those things are really good. He's got good vision. He's got good feel. So you have this dichotomy of a hammerback who's physical, drop the shoulder pads, he'll make you pay for it at the end of a run. You're going to fall forward for a couple extra yards. But you also have the dichotomy of the side-to-side agility. Really good with that. And so you'll see defenders load up because they think the battering ram thing is coming and he can evade them. And you see vice versa. He's got different tools for different situations and he pulls them out contextually, whatever it takes to win. He's been one of the best running backs in the nation over the past 3 years. Again, 2 different conferences, 2 vastly different systems. This guy was a top 10 RB in this class throughout. I don't know why he wasn't recognized as that, but a worthy RB7 on my board.
No, I like it because you said it too. Like he might not have the, what do you like? You like to say wiggle with him or like the burst to make those defenders miss. But then when you look at him and you look back, you say, oh, well, he's just going to power through you. So that's totally fine. So maybe that's the part that people don't necessarily love. But I've been seeing him described as a dirty work runner for the NFL. So maybe that's kind of a depth chart that we see him added on. And that, I mean, in the NFL and in for fantasy football, Thor, that could be good for us.
Yeah, he's gonna be doing a lot of your running concepts for you. Where he gets dinged, it's the pass game contributions. And as far as the team that takes him, you're gonna have a receiving back. Right. I mean, like they're not hard to find. There's 1 billion in this class. There's 1 billion already in the NFL. It's you can mix and match this. This is where the league is gone. Damien Martinez, I believe he has the potential to be one of the NFL's better early down backs, short yardage backs, these sorts of things. He's not a plotter. Right. I mean, he's not. He can get out there in the second level, the third level. He's not going to run away from NFL cornerbacks, but he has all the juice that he needs to get out there into the second, third level. But it's an efficiency back. Right. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to keep moving the chains. He's going to keep your offense on schedule and a scheme versatility. That's the thing, the concept that he proved that his game, it can fit into vastly different type systems. So it's not one of these backs in this class where they're, it's like, oh, the 12 teams in the league that run this kind of running scheme, this guy has to get with, like, for instance, Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Love Caleb Johnson's game. He has to go to one of the true blue zone running schemes. If he does, I think he'll be a star, right? But that is not scheme versatility. He can't go into a gap one. Damien Martinez, he could play in either one. So it sort of opens up the board, and I think it's one thing that's going to lead to him going a little bit sooner maybe than people anticipate right now.
I like it. Another running back that you're higher on than consensus too is RJ Harvey out of UCF here. Your rank RB6 in the Thor 500 and then consensus RB10 for him. And this guy, I mean, listen, when you look at RJ Harvey, he might be short, Thor, like a little bit on the shorter side, but 205 pounds. We saw him 440 at the combine. It was great. 38-inch vertical. He was all there.
RJ Harvey, 6 is higher than the consensus, of course, with RJ Harvey, but it wasn't for me, should I rank him any lower? At the end here, it's like RJ Harvey against Quinshon Judkins for me. Like, RJ Harvey was moving in on my top 5. I love this kid's game. You have all these different sort of disparate elements that are combined here that I think make for a really cool runner. Number one, I love the bowling ball build as is, and RJ Harvey's got his bowling ball build. 5'8", he weighed in at 205 during the pre-drop process, but he plays closer to 212. 212 is now my threshold for the weight. Right? Like, it used to be 215. It's dropped to 212. Every position's getting a little bit smaller in the NFL. But anyway, in terms of that, he is a threshold size back who has legitimate 4.4 wheels, even high 4.3 wheels. RJ Harvey was a little bit annoyed that he didn't get in the 4.3s. He ran a 4.4 flat during the pre-draft process. He had been training in the high 4.3s. But you get the home run hitter with the bowling ball build. He's got good instincts. It's a guy who can both run between the tackles because bowling ball build, good vision. He also has the darty agility there. So you'll see him do some of the slalom-y type stuff between the tackles. He also has the lateral explosion. When you see the immediate penetration, he can flee the scene by getting flat down the line and then going around the other way. Won't be as viable in the NFL as far as hitting the dingers. He did plenty of those at UCF on stuff like that, but he has the athleticism to escape. When a 3 technique shoots a gap and threatens to blow up the play right away, RJ Harvey can get away from him. And then the part of his game that's going to be better in the NFL than it was in college is him as a receiver. Talking to RJ Harvey in Mobile, I was down at the Senior Bowl. I was asking him, what's the thing you want to prove to teams down here? And he said, my receiving ability, he said at UCF, they didn't use me, as I could have been, didn't allow me to run as many routes, past the line of scrimmage. And I told him, I said, you're one of 2 backs in this class that had at least 1.25 yards per route run the past 2 seasons, or running backs in this draft class. And he sort of chuckled. He didn't know that, but we saw it when at Senior Bowl in the one-on-one drills, when he was able to run those routes down the field, he was breaking the ankles of the linebackers, of the strong safeties. It's really difficult to stay with this kid in space, and he's got good hands. Former quarterback RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey arrived at Virginia as a freshman, true freshman in college, as a dual threat quarterback, 5'7.5", dual threat quarterback, and then of course he goes to UCF. But he has the great understanding of coverage designs, very good field vision there. He will find a soft spot in his zone, and he's got the footwork and the athleticism to break ankles out there before the ball's left the quarterback's hand, create separation past the line of scrimmage. You get more of those opportunities, he's going to give you more yak yardage. RJ Harvey, big time sleeper in this class. I comp him to Tajay Spears. A lot of similarities.
Oh, okay. All right, I like that comp a lot, and that stat that you said, he was when you look at him, caught at least 19 balls with at least that 1.25 yards per route run each of the last 2 years. I mean, that was good. And then I like that you described him. He's slippery as a banana peel. You don't get that anywhere else, Thor. People have to check out the Thor 500 to get some of your descriptions like that. But there is never a shortage of those with you, and that's what makes me excited to read it. Continuing on here, let's go over to a wide receiver in Tory Horton out of Colorado State, who, looking back, we haven't spent much time on, but I'm curious what you like about him and what makes him a little bit higher for you consensus-wise. You're wide receiver 11, consensus wide receiver 13. I mean, he's quick, right? He had these season-ending knee injuries, though, Thor, that I have to imagine puts that into account for your rankings.
Yeah, he gets nitpicked. You remember that movie with the horse? Was it Secretariat or whatever? And then the guy, the owner, he's like, my jockey's too big, my horse is too small. He's like going through these different things. That's like Tory Horton. It's like my wide receiver's too skinny. He had too many injuries last year. He's too G5y. And Tory Horton's got nitpick. But if you just go back to his film and you just look at the profile, 6'2.5", he's near 200 pounds, plays at 200 pounds with 196 this pre-draft process, but 98th percentile size adjusted athlete. And you see that on his film. This is one of the more productive receivers that we had the last couple of years in college football. Now, he got injured last year, and that's a part of this thing. Like, you hear things that, like, oh, Tory Horton, he's got durability concern. No, he doesn't. He got injured one time. Right? Like Tyler Shuck, some of these other guys that were injured every single year, they don't get the same durability concern thing attached to them because their last season, they happen to stay healthy the full time. I don't think it's fair to pin that on Tory Horton. And like his game, very, very smooth. He's a smooth operator, gets off the line. He has that athleticism. He has the burst and really reliable ball skills as well. He knows what he's doing as a route runner. It's no coincidence, the numbers that he put up at Colorado State. So it's 5.6% career drop rate, by the way, over heavy volume there, speaking to the hands and the ball skills. Really like Tory Horton. I think that's a guy that's going to be an NFL starter. Maybe not year one, but beyond that, I think you're looking at a long-term NFL starter.
All right, we got to keep an eye then on Tory Horton again out of Colorado State. Your wide receiver 11 in that Thor 500 that everyone can go and find at fantasylife.com. We've got another wide receiver that the jokes are flying. We love him. You love him in the group chat. We're going to give you that name, but first, let's hear from our friends over at Bud Light.
Hey, you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You got to wait till it's done. Oh.
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, Thor, Isaac TeSlaa is the guy that we have to talk about here when we're looking at your rankings and just the Thor 500. You're higher on him than consensus. Your wide receiver 14, unranked consensus-wise, so that's a bit of a problem there for us, but this just means we get to talk a little bit more about him and why you like him here. Seems more, Thor, when you look at him, like developmental talent, but he seems like he just has this raw ability that you've told us time and time again that can be utilized in the NFL.
Yeah, been banging the table for TeSlaa. We're going to keep banging the table for TeSlaa in this bad receiver class. This kid has multi-year starter ceiling and projectable tools. And again, being slept on. TeSlaa, what he is, it's a big slot. Right. I mean, that's what he played at Arkansas. And contextually, part of the reason he gets overlooked was dominant for 3 years at Hillsdale College, right? Under the small lights, literally dominant, man amongst boys. And then the last 2 years, Arkansas got caught in a bad situation where they had incredible wide receiver depth. They didn't have the superstar wide receiver, but they had hockey lines of depth there. A couple other ones in this class, Andrew Armstrong, Tyrone Broda, and wide receivers from Arkansas. They had a couple other guys going back to college this year that will be in the NFL. So because of that, there was inconsistencies in playing time with all of them, right? Like every single one of those guys had snaps taken away from them. And then you had a quarterback that wasn't great as a pocket passer, nor getting the ball down the field. He's a big athlete, but the arm, it's still coming along. Because of this, TeSlaa didn't get to show the full gamut of what he could do at Arkansas. But 6'2.5", extremely well-built kid, 214 pounds, both for the receiver class, 99th percentile size adjusted athlete this pre-draft process. And TeSlaa did every single athletic test, was one of the very few wide receivers that did that. We knew he was going to have really good the vertical jump and the speed as well, because the instances we've seen him get downtown and get off the carpet for balls. The agility was really surprising because we didn't see as much of, the usage in the Arkansas system out of that big slot role. They used it to try to stretch the field down that way. TeSlaa tested elite in the agility drills as well. I think you're going to see some dormant potential there for him in the intermediate range. We saw some of that in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. He really opened the eyes with the downfield stuff, but we saw some of that on the Arkansas film, right, where they throw up lollipops and then he'd go up and sky over someone for it. That's the thing he can do. He's got springy legs. He'll go up and get it. But again, as the big slot that he projects to be, I think you get, downfield utility like a Alec Pierce, but like the the big slot stuff, the intermediate efficiency, the different stuff he could do as a route runner there. The guys that it would evoke for me, Devin Vele from the last class, right? He fell through the cracks because he was in a bad situation in college, projected as the big slot, and immediately made an impact in the NFL as a big slot. Another guy that this is reminiscent of, you have to go back a couple more years, but this guy had a big fan club, Quincy Riley. It's a very similar, TeSlaa and Enunwa have very similar frames, very similar athletic profiles. And I think you're going to get sort of the multi-skilled, versatile sort of ball advancer that you saw with Quincy Riley there for the couple years of his prime.
And especially, Thor, because you've said this a lot, and this is just something that everyone knows by now, but this wide receiver class is not that deep. So when you have your eye on a guy like TeSlaa, who maybe is still a work in progress, right, with his ability to create space, with his route running abilities as well, but that's something that you can hone in when you get to that NFL team. So a good like depth piece, I really like that call out for him, and that's someone that people definitely have to be paying attention to. Let's go over to some tight ends, because again, we've talked through this tight end class, Thor, and you really like some of these top tier guys, but you told us to keep an eye on some of the other ones too. Terrance Ferguson being one, tight end 4 in your rankings, consensus tight end 6 in the Thor 500. Again, live at fantasylife.com right now. So make sure you go and check it out. What do you like about Terrance Ferguson right now?
I think he's underrated. You know, like you look at everybody has like a gap between him and Mason Taylor, and I'm not really sure why. You know, like you look at the athletic package, the athleticism. Ferguson's actually more athletic than Taylor is, and showed arguably more as a receiver in college. Like Taylor, the thing he was really good at, it was the timing concepts, and then you hit your spot 6 yards upfield, a quick foot in the dirt. Now you flatten out to the right towards the sidelines, and the timing concepts with it. Didn't see him as much down the field. We got to see Ferguson both intermediate. He also made plays down the field, and it's one of he shares this in common with Taylor. But we don't have a ton of tight ends in this class that are project to be inline guys at the next level and prove that concept in the FBS. Terrance Ferguson did, and so Terrance Ferguson, I think he gets a little, you know, just in terms of those guys in the top 5, top 6 consensus tight ends. I think he's just a little bit slept on in terms of that.
With his RAS score, like 9.81 RAS score was phenomenal. And it feels like, could he be a day 2 guy, Thor? Or is that, being a little bit optimistic for him?
He will definitely be a day 2 guy. It's just going to come down to, could he sneak into the latter half of round 2, or is it going to be round 3? But yeah, like I would put my money on round 3 with him, but I do think that you do have that shot for the end of round 2. I mean, think of the constitution of this tight end class, right? You have the 2 guys that we know, or we have one that may go in the top 10 in Tyler Warren, and then Loveland, a decent shot. He is going in the top half of the first round. Well, then after that, you look at the whether it be consensus top 5 or 6, like I say, you got 3 or 4 of those guys left. When does the next one go? Right? Like some people think Mason Taylor might even go at the end of the first round. You have the bloodlines there. Obviously, Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas, is also in the family tree there. And then what we saw with him the last couple of years. But there are some teams that are very high on Mason Taylor because of these things. If he ends up going late first round or very beginning of the second, will that pull up some of the price points of the guys right behind him? I'm curious about that, the way that manifests both on Ferguson, on Harold Fannin. Is another interesting one to monitor. But that's around where they're going to go.
Another tight end, Thomas Fidone out of Nebraska, is someone that you really like here, Thor. You're ranking tight end 7 consensus, another unranked guy. So you're already way ahead of people if he's able to kind of flash what he was able to show in college. He was, by the way, I did not know this, but highly recruited out of high school too. He was ranked 1 spot ahead of Brock Bowers in that 2021 tight end recruiting class, that has a lot to show for him.
Sure was. Yeah. For people out there that have never heard of Thomas Fidone, this is a kid you can root for. He came in, you mentioned it. He was an elite tight end recruit, elite, up in that rarefied air, goes to college, going to Nebraska, I'm going to be a star, everything like this. Tears one ACL the 1 year, the next year, in advance of the season, tears the other one. So that's what he began his first 2 college seasons with, was wreck seasons because of torn ACLs. Then the last 2 seasons, we got to see him on the field. The first one, he's working in there. right? Like in 2023, right? The first year of Matt Rule there, like because, tight end's already a slow developing position. Everybody knows that. You get to a new level, tight end's one of the slowest developing positions because you're existing between that line between an offensive lineman and a skill player, right? And you got to do stuff on both ends of it. So, and then all the different spots in the formation that you line up and these sorts of things. So Fidone worked in that first year. And then last year we got to see him a bit more, more snaps and these sorts of things, trusted a little bit more. But the constitution of that offense, we still didn't get to see him go down the seam a ton, right? The passing game was already a bit limited as is. Got a little bit better last season with the kid that pretends to be Pat Mahomes taking over there at quarterback. But the outside boundary receivers, they had a couple big ones that could get downfield. Both of them are in this class, Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks, and those are big speedsters. So you didn't send Fidone down the field quite as much. But Fidone, what you get with him, reason he was such a high recruit, you have the inline, the classic inline frame. He has a perfect one. And he has retained the elite athleticism that led to his elite standing in the recruiting boards, despite the 2 knee injuries. In fact, Kendall, if you were to pull up Thomas Fidone's RAS card right now, the number one athletic comparable for him based on the last 25 years, every tight end that is tried out for the NFL during the pre-draft process, their testing numbers and then their frame, the number one guy that he is most similar to athletically with his frame is TJ Hawkinson. So you retain, again, all the tools that led to you being viewed on a similar qualitative plane to Brock Bowers. It's just we didn't get to see as much in college because of the context. Those first 2 years wiped out by the knee injury, and then coming back and you're not in an offense where they're chucking the ball up as much. But I think that there is a ton of dormant potential lying within this kid. So that's why I rank him tight end 7. You get outside sort of the top consensus top 6. For me, Fidone is in a group of his own because he's the guy who has the talent where this guy could be a long-term starter easily in the NFL if his body doesn't betray him again.
Yeah, that's the one thing looking at him too. Like he obviously needs to develop once he gets into the NFL, and once he goes into those training camps, he's going to need to show it off. But he hasn't played his best football yet. Like a lot of these guys haven't, but we really haven't seen it yet with him and the potential that he has. So that's what's more exciting about Fidone. With the injuries aside, like there could be something really special in the NFL with him. So that's really awesome. And again, I love the ranking too. Tight end 7 for Thor. Consensus is unranked, so that's where you have to look at it. The Thor 500 live at fantasylife.com. So that's going to be a special one if he goes to the right place. Let's continue on here, Thor. Let's get into some linemen here. And I need the Seattle Seahawks to listen up with this guy because this Thor is my favorite for the Seattle Seahawks. If they don't get a Matthew Golden, that's fine. But Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State, everyone needs to know his name. Your offensive lineman, 4 on the board here, and then consensus OL 12, which is again a big gap. But people need to start knowing his name because he seems special.
Yeah, and we're talking overall the offensive line class. So right, tossing in tackles, guards, centers. Zabel's the only one that can make an argument. I could start at every dang one of those in the NFL. The NFL, if you don't believe Gray Zabel, the NFL believes that, to an extent. Gray Zabel was the one guy at the Senior Bowl that played every single position along the offensive line. Left tackle to right tackle, right? They were moving them all over the place. Then Gray Zabel was the only offensive lineman in Mobile that did not lose a one-on-one rep. The one-on-one reps heavily slanted towards the defense. It's interesting what you're saying, Kendall, about the Seahawks because, and I'm guilty of this, of course, is like in these mock exercises, we do so many of them. Once you get to the stop of Seattle, as long as either McMillan or Golden have been there, guys that can win on the boundary because of the wide receiving core, you got the 2 good slots there. You're going to move Smith and Jigba, I guess, outside, but you don't want to add another slot receiver. So it's like if one of them 2 guys gets there, I've been slotting them to Seattle. But in this receiver class, obviously it's a down receiver class, but there are interesting guys that you can, shoot your shot on for a whatever role you're sort of looking for, be that on day 2 or be that on day 3. It is interesting, a thought experiment with Seattle, a team that has struggled with their interior offensive line, and maybe you could even say offensive line in general, going back a bit. Gray Zabel would be a tremendous fit there. And potentially in round 2, especially if it was golden. You think of this 3-dimensional chess. If it's golden against, say, a guy in round 2, and by the way, Seattle has a ton of draft equity, as you know, in part because of the trades that they made, to get where they are right now. Jaden Higgins would be a great fit there, right? A true blue boundary receiver that scares the defense deep. Trey Harris could be another one. But if you were to take a guy like Gray Zabel, but I love Gray Zabel's game. It's a guy that in the NFL, I believe, will be either a center or a guard. You could try him at right tackle too. Might be stretching a little bit at left tackle, although that's where he was dominant the last couple of seasons at North Dakota State. And I do mean dominant. I mean dang near perfect, as in dang near did not lose any reps, over 850 snaps last year at North Dakota State. He's a very good athlete. He is a grappler. So some of these kids with some wrestling background, you get the grappling thing, you get the core strength thing, where he can get rocked, but he's not going to lose his balance. It's another trait of Gray Zabel's. Very competitive kid, and he's got that footwork, right? The footwork to stay with you, so to stay in front of you. So Gray Zabel, a guy that could play all over the place. I think he'd be a good fit for Seattle, be a good fit for a whole bunch of different teams, and a super underrated offensive lineman.
Like you said it, if those two receivers are gone, Golden, then you look at Gray Zabel and you say, we have to fix this offensive line. It's not something that they normally do in the draft, but it's obvious, Thor, that things have to change for the Seahawks and how they just evaluate offensive line talent. They can't do it. It's just not there. So he's athletic. He has this easy moving ability where I fell in love watching Gray Zabel. So it'll be fun to see where he goes. Hopefully the Seattle Seahawks are watching and they take him here. So let's do that. CJ West out of Indiana. Let's move on to him. He's ranked right now for you at 11. Consensus is 19. What have you seen from him? Why should people know his name?
It makes sense that CJ West is underrated because of the dimensions. He's crazy sawed off and a bit of an unorthodox game, of course, with that. The more you watch that kid, the more he's going to grow on you. There's a lot of similarities there to Poona Ford, another guy where it's like I think of them like it's like in my backyard back here by the pond. There's a tree that fell down years before I moved here. It must have been a big one. It's this big stump. You can't get rid of the thing, right? I can't cut through the thing. I can't knock the thing over. That's what CJ West is in run defense. He's a stump that you cannot move. You're not moving him. Like Poona Ford is like this too. The last class. Now this guy went higher, but he had more of the pass rushing utility and he had more athleticism. But Byron Murphy from Texas was the same thing. When he saw the guy coming forward, he's planting himself. He's planting his 2 feet. You're not moving him backwards. Indiana, their rate against the runs inside the guards last year was elite nationally. They were number 1 by margin, and the reason was because of CJ West. Double teams don't matter. You can't move that kid. And it doesn't make sense. You just look at the measurables, but it is what it is. One of the best run defenders in this class from the interior defensive line position, despite his physical dimensions. And you get the relentlessness as well with some bull rushing from him, some craftiness with switching through the pass rushing moves as a pass rusher. But the number one thing with his game is being that stump that cannot be pulled from the earth. And because of that, he is going to improve any run defense of any defense that he gets on from day one. Really like CJ West's game.
Listen, I'm going to need you to post the photo of the tree that's stuck in your backyard and CJ West when he gets drafted and be like, this is this guy. This is the draft comp that I'm going to say. It's like the thing in your backyard. I like that
CJ West. Yeah, that stump is CJ West now.
I need the tweet. But listen, you said it. He's got the things. He's got the qualities that the NFL likes, and he's got the ability. So he could be a valuable part of any defensive line rotation in the NFL, like you said, with Poona Ford. So I like that comp a lot over there. Continuing on, let's go over to edge. Donovan Ezeiruaku out of Boston College, someone whose name I know you've brought up a lot, but he right now is ranked 3rd for you, consensus 6 over there in our rankings. And again, fantasylife.com to check out that Thor 500 where you can get all of these names. But what do you see from Donovan Ezeiruaku that kind of stands out for you?
Yeah, and we talked about Ezeiruaku, so I'll keep my comments quicker on this one. But Ezeiruaku, he's another kind of a guy where he's going to grow on you the more that you see him. You get the utility, of course, with the pass rushing, and a good athlete there as well. But he's a sawed-off guy, 6'2.5", 248. But he has this cornucopia of pass rushing moves, and the one sort of quirk with his dimensions has crazy long arms for his sawed-off frame. Because of that, he always keeps the distance, and then again, he can cycle through all these different moves. He will eventually free himself, and he's a better run defender than he's given credit for. Then you see on the surface with his measurables, people make assumptions about that. This is a guy that can blow into the backfield really, really quick and pull the pin out of the grenade on a play. I really like Donovan Ezeiruaku, and that's going to be a top 20 guy on my board.
He's worked so hard, like to add bulk to that frame as well. I know you were talking about that in the past couple weeks, but he just seems reliable, like a guy that's going to be polished. So this is one that I'm definitely excited to watch as well once draft night comes for him to go off the board. Continuing on, let's go over to a linebacker in Cody Lindenberg out of Minnesota. LB8 for you, consensus LB15 on the board here. Same kind of question here, Thor. What makes him stand out more to you than consensus rankers?
He gets nitpicked a little bit because he's a year older than some of the guys. Cody's 23. A lot of other ones are 22. Demetrius Knight, 25. You want to go the other way. So not the crazy oldest end, but just a little bit older. And then last 2 years, Cody Lindenberg, or 2 of the last 3 years, I'm sorry, there was injuries where he didn't get to play the full season. But when you see him on the field, it is a well-rounded game from a throwback linebacker, and one who, when we saw him on the field with the Gophers, he was always the green dot guy, calling out the plays and then moving people around. Really advanced understanding of football. The football IQ is very high. It's a coach on the field kind of a guy. PJ Fleck fawns over Cody Lindenberg whenever he's brought up. PJ Fleck says he's the best linebacker that he ever coached. And you're talking about a guy who is a good athlete in a big package, 6'2.5", 236. He plays a little bit over 240, when he's on the field, but then over 82nd percentile size adjusted athlete. He's fluid. He comes forward quick. He's rangy with the wingspan, can get in there in zone coverage and disrupt passing lanes because of that. I think it's a guy that gets a little bit slept on because of this, because of he's a year older than some of the other guys, and because 2 of the last 3 seasons he got nicked up a little bit. But NFL teams, I've heard, really enjoy talking to this kid. He's been asked back for the second, third interviews by multiple teams at this point. There's more interest in league circles for Cody Lindenberg than is reflected by his ranking on some of these different things. So underrated linebacker for sure.
He was productive in 2024 too, so maybe one of those developmental guys that we always talk about as a starter in the NFL is something that you can look at for him. Continuing on, cornerback here, Quincy Riley out of Louisville, CB9 for you, consensus CB13 in the Thor 500. What are we seeing from Quincy that you like here? I mean, Thor, he's athletic. That's something we can say about him.
Yeah, he's a little bit on the smaller end, and he's another guy where it's a little bit older, 23 moving towards 24. So, the other guys in this class, most of them are bigger than him. A lot of them are younger than him and some of that stuff. But as far as just the mechanics of coverage, I love this kid's game about as much as anyone in this cornerback class. One of those feisty guys that is in your grill from the second you get off the bus. He'll be with you in the locker room, talking smack to you. He'll be in your hip pocket when you're walking out, in the tunnel. And then for 4 quarters, you're not shaking him. And he's just one of those Nat kind of a guys. His game, it reminds me a little bit a couple of years ago, a guy the Vikings took out of the Pac-12, Mekhi Blackman. It's a very similar thing, just a Nat. You can't get rid of him. So some of the measurables, again, comparing them against other people, he's not going to be flattered as much by that. But when you turn on the tape and you look at him in coverage, you notice that people can't get away from the guy. So he's going to be at a lot of catch points. He disrupts the timing of a lot of plays. He's a better press guy than you would think from his frame. So for all those reasons, I think Quincy Riley is a sleeper in this corner class.
And the last sleeper that you have, someone that you're a little bit higher on than consensus here, is Billy Bowman is the next guy we're going to talk about here. You see it on the screen here, 7 for you, consensus at 4. So what do you like here with him? I know tackling's been a major issue, but it still feels like, the coverage impact when you look at it has to be undeniable from what you see in him.
Yeah, there was a guy a couple classes ago that came out in the Big 12, and he got nitpicked all process long, and I banged the table for him all process. I said, this kid's a first-round pick. He ended up going in the second. He has returned value back. That was Jalen Petrie coming out of Baylor. People looked at Jalen Petrie, and they're like, oh, he too, it's the thing we were talking about with from the movie with the horse racer, right? It's like, he's too small. He's not fast enough. They would just tick off these different things, but you turn on the tape, guy who was always around the ball. When it's a running concept, triggered immediately. You're not blocking him. He's running the alley, utterly fearless. It's William Wallace kamikaze, flying downhill there, getting involved with that kind of stuff. And then as in coverage, guy who sees things before they happen. And so he tends to be at more catch points than you would think from his physical dimensions. It's a guy who played deep more at Oklahoma. I've talked about this idea with some people around Oklahoma about the idea of, could he be better in the NFL as a full-time nickel? That was something that he moonlighted at Oklahoma as well. I think that's what you're going to see in the NFL. Now, it's a guy that can move around. I mean, he can even be a box linebacker, fearless. When you go into dime, he could be the defensive back that you put in there. But I think it's worth considering with Billy Bowman a potential move to full-time nickel, as his sort of base alignment. But either way, a well-rounded game. He's on the smaller side. Some of the measurables, again, it's sort of like we were talking about with Quincy Riley. But when you look at skills on the field as opposed to athletic traits that can be tested for off of it, that's where Billy Bowman starts to acquit himself really well. This guy's a better football player than will be reflected in his draft slot next weekend.
And flip him. I had him wrong there. He's 4 for you, 7 consensus wise. So still you're higher on him than consensus rankings for Billy Bowman. So that's exciting there. Thor, that was it for us today here. Again, everyone has to go check out though, and I can't say it enough, the Thor 500 at fantasylife.com. And congratulations to you, Thor, because that's a ton of work that you put into that. So I'm excited to get down and read it. Print it at your job. Just don't tell them that we told you to do that. But get it printed, get it ready for draft night. Thank you everyone so much for joining us here today. fantasylife.com for that Thor 500. We'll see you next time.